Good day and welcome to Designing Competency-Based Pathways for Next Generation Learning and Special Populations, sponsored by Odysseyware. My name is Tina Kassler and I'm the Integrated Marketing and Strategy Storyteller with PR with Panache, and I will be serving as your moderator today. Today you'll be hearing from Joel Ramirez. Joel has worked in education and training for both private and public agencies. He has worked as a teacher, school coordinator, corporate trainer, and director. His work in school districts have led to many personalized learning initiatives, district-wide RTI programs, and a variety of blended learning solutions. Now, before we get started, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be a closed mic session. Registrants will receive a link to the recorded version of this webinar once it is posted online. Please enter your questions for the Q&A session at the end of this webinar in the area noted Q&A or chat. Now, moving along to the webinar, please welcome Joel Ramirez, who will be speaking to us about designing competency-based pathways for next-gen learning and special populations. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Joel.
Thank you. I am very excited to be presenting a topic on designing competency-based pathways for next-gen learning and special populations. I always find it a little bit funny that I actually having the opportunity to talk about this subject, because I remember growing up and being in school, and I had a teacher who loved to say and tell his students, you guys are just so incompetent at this. You guys are just incompetent. Well, I'm here to say I am competent, and so are you. And I hope that you are providing messages for your students about their competency and learning about what is competency-based learning today as our laws are changing. ESSA now has new regulations that encourages personalized learning and competency-based pathways and the implementation of such for our schools. So I'm very, very excited to definitely present this topic for you today. So a little bit about the history of competency-based education. In the United States, we really saw the movement for competency-based education after the post-war boom. The boom in industry was just phenomenal. And as you know, we had a lot of need and demand for more refrigerators, ovens, stoves, cars, a lot of mechanical items. And so now we are now focused from a traditional mindset of education to perhaps we are studying to be lawyers and attorneys, to now the need for a career-focused education. The concept of career-focused education really started focusing on the mastery of concepts. The mastery of concepts to complete work tasks that have been developed for the development of these planes and trains and all of the new needs for this post-war setting. And so schools had to become smarter at how do we prepare our students to be competent in some of these mechanics of building, let's just say an automobile. We first, of course, saw this is we learn in history with the assembly line by Henry Ford, so Model T. And people were basically working to develop one section or one component of an automobile and do that very well. We also see Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, they are learning about, they have really maximized on competency-based approaches. As we all know, they only purchase one type of airplane rather than some of our other airlines that develop all different kinds of airplane models. So developing one kind of airplane has allowed for them to maximize revenue by keeping their students focused and their new employees focused on just developing and maintaining a single type of airplane. We see this in today's world called the badge concept. Many of us were in the Boy Scouts. I personally was not in the Boy Scouts. I did not have that privilege, although a lot of my friends did, and I was very jealous because they got to walk around with these very awesome badges. And I would always wonder, what does that mean, that little flame with a log and seeing these badges? And the concept was that if you could master a skill, you would receive a badge. It was simple as that. So we are seeing the growth of competency-based education in today's world. So competencyworks.org, a very reputable organization for learning about competency-based learning. Competency education is an approach to teaching and learning in which students advance upon demonstrated mastery, again, according to competencyworks.org. Competencies include explicit, measurable, transferable learning objectives that empower students. An assessment is meaningful and a positive learning experience for students. So with our students advancing upon mastery, we are really looking at ways for teachers to start scaffolding their lessons and really organizing the standards and trying to figure out how do these standards really relate to each other in order to develop an outcome. So it's now instructional design is starting to evolve around a competency. And the challenge for a lot of teachers is, how do I make this assessment meaningful? And as we are going to discuss later in today's presentation and discussion, we will find some tools on what are we using to help make our assessments meaningful. Students in a competency-based environment should also be receiving rapid, differentiated support based on their individual learning needs. Now, this is very, very difficult to do in today's age. When I first started teaching at LA Unified, my English classroom had, I would say on average, about 42 to 46 students per classroom period. Now, if my administrator were to tell me you are to give rapid, differentiated support on every single student, well, that would probably mean that every day I would have to do some kind of IEP writing for 210 students, more or less. And so this is somewhat of the reality going on in some of our metro schools today. And so how are we using the tools available to us to help us? And we will be discussing that today in today's presentation. Learning outcomes. Emphasize competencies that include the application and creation of knowledge. So again, we are looking at outcomes. Outcomes. That is going to be a key word in competency-based education. And the process of reaching learning outcomes to encourage students to develop those skills and dispositions important for success in college, careers, and citizenship. So we're all hearing today about the college and career readiness standards and how are we developing that. The new ESSA requirements are also promoting these college and career standards. So it helps keep us in mind that yes, we have our students who will be going to college, but we also have students who need to engage directly into their careers. Where are we seeing competencies today with our students? Many of you monitoring your classrooms, walking around, may catch your students on their cell phones playing these little games. What makes them so addictive? A screenshot that I provided for you here provides an example of a games that we commonly see now with these new apps that are developing. Apps such as Candy Crush, Angry Birds, they all seem to have this same approach. When you complete a level, you are given immediate feedback. This sounds a lot like our competency-based, one of our competency-based definitions. They not only give you feedback on one area of let's say something that you accomplished in the level that you were on, but they may also take a total tally of how many levels you have completed or how well you completed the this level. And so students today are being exposed to this concept of mastery with gaming, and now we're calling it gamification, very, very, very early on. But the interesting thing is, well, what happens if I only get 1 star in Candy Crush? Part of the perfectionism in some of our students and teaching staff, and maybe myself, as I might be guilty of such, has to get the 3 stars. I have to go back. And with competency-based education or gamification, you are now allowed to go back and try again and continue to develop these skills. Though I don't know what transferable skills Candy Crush may give me, but what we are seeing now is schools and even universities, such as Capella University, creating similar types of dashboards for their learning assessments. And these tools are really starting to augment and provide a more holistic picture for our students and teachers to be able to monitor and assess the skills and competencies needed. So what do you notice in this dashboard? You have criteria, an amount of criteria set. It looks like I have this meter that is showing me the progress to meet those criterias, and it shows a holistic picture of how many assignments I've completed. It's giving me different elements of competencies that the teacher has set up, such as analyzing data, thinking critically to solve problems, and communicating effectively. So these elements are definitely components that a customizable dashboard was able to bring about for Capella University. And what's great is that we're seeing more and more technology tools apply dashboards like these that will provide immediate student feedback and responses. Now, standards-based grading, a lot of us have been introduced to this concept, and some of us may or may not have seen it, but I bet you a lot of us, if we think really hard, can remember when we actually received our first standards-based grade. And if you think really, really hard, I think you could go back to elementary school. I remember in elementary school looking at my report cards, and I just remember seeing 3 letters, an O, N, or S. Maybe I did outstanding, maybe it was in need of improvements, or I completed it satisfactorily. Maybe that's comparable to what we're seeing today with these standards-based grading report cards. The one that I have example shown to you is from our Common Core curriculum components where the assessment is actually taking all the standards and making them into, and has made them into I can statements. So I can quote from a text explicitly and draw inferences. I can determine the meaning of words and phrases in a text, including figurative language such as metaphors and similes. So now the teacher has an ability to gauge from a scale of 1 through 4 exactly where their competency might be within that particular standard. So again, it's taking the standards and then making them into I can statements. So as students are monitoring and looking at how well that they can accomplish their competencies, the challenge for teachers is, of course, is finding how do I make it interesting. And some breakthrough phenomenal research that I know we're all shocked by, when interest is tapped, learning is more likely to be rewarding and students are more likely to be autonomous learners. So nothing really shocking there, but it's funny how this quote from Harvard Educational Review was made way back in 1961. Now, we all know that interest tapping interest for our students is becoming more and more challenging every day, as we seem to be in competition with so much student stimulation that's out there that they're seeing and being exposed to every day. So there are different ways that we're going to have to think about in delivering our competency-based models. So the U.S. Department of Education, they have also defined competency-based learning and competency-based strategies to provide flexibility in the way that credit can be earned or awarded and provide students with personalized learning opportunities. So what I find fascinating is this next part. These strategies include online and blended learning, dual enrollment and early college high schools, project-based and community-based learning, and credit recovery, among others. So this definition here really starts promoting this idea of blended learning, as we're starting to see it more and more, especially with our new ESSA requirements. Dual enrollment, when we are actually exposing the opportunity for students to actually be dual enrolled in college. However, I also think of it as dual enrollment potentially from, let's just say, middle school and a high school. I am seeing more personalized learning school districts actually implementing dual enrollment opportunities where students in the 6th and 7th grade might be able to take a course at a high school as well. Now, this brings a lot of logistical problems that districts are still trying to solve for, but with the aid of technology and courses that are delivered online or aided online and worked in a blended environment with teachers have opened up many doorways to consider for our school districts. Is dual enrollment just doesn't have to be high school and college. It can be middle school and high school as well. So we're seeing some great success with some of our learning platforms in allowing these types of opportunities. And project-based learning. Project-based is going to be one of the main essential keys, I believe, in the competency-based implementations. Project-based learning really accesses some of those higher DOKs, which we'll be discussing here later in the presentation. So what does this mean for some of our special populations? If you are being asked more about competency-based education and or have to promote it, or let's just say even pitch it to your community or to your administrators or to your teachers, some things to consider. A study was done that competency-based instruction allows ELL learners and special education students, it provides them alternative mechanisms to demonstrate their proficiency in a content area. So again, it's the teachers providing different ways to produce outcomes. And that again is just going to be such a crucial word moving forward, is looking at what outcomes are the students producing. So let's start with ELL. And let's think about the challenges that we have with our ELL students. For some of us who are studying in our teaching credentials and let's just say in Texas and California, many teachers are required to receive a language acquisition credential alongside with their teaching credential. So many of us have studied some of these components, but I wanted to review first that we are taught the first stage of language acquisition, which many of us had heard of as BICS, is basic interpersonal communication skills. It's funny because I grew up as a dual language learner, and I growing up in the United States and in Los Angeles, quickly started forgetting a lot of my Spanish as I grew up both English and Spanish, in an English and Spanish household. And at the age of 6, when I would speak with my family, I felt in my mind that I was the most fluent Spanish speaker in the world. Well, as I grew older and at my household, or as I grew up, I thought, oh, Spanish is just becoming less and less popular, because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be integrated with everybody that I grew up with, and English was our language. Because it's what was in the movies, it's what was on TV. I started losing, unfortunately, my my language skills. But it's funny that I often think back and I think, gosh, I was fluent at the age of 6, or I was fluent when I was young in Spanish. Well, not really, because I was basically speaking the vocabulary of any 6-year-old might, and we would call that some of our basic communication skills. However, the second stage, cognitive academic language proficiency. This is the stage of language proficiency at which a student can fully achieve academic success. So we are using our word context to actually make predictions or reflections and access different levels, such as with the DOKs, the depth of knowledge, and really being able to speak to those. This stage takes an additional 3 to 7 years to master. So think about our students who are coming into our school districts, and they may have been introduced to English at the basic level, but now in order to perform successfully in our classrooms, research is showing if it's taking them 3 to 7 years, but they have to start meeting testing requirements at my grade level, do I have 3 to 7 years to wait when I am getting pressured that I have to improve test scores and improve these competencies? Well, that is going to be quite a challenge to do. But again, looking at these competencies and really approaching this methodology with the I can statements and starting to break down these standards and group them together by what is the outcome that you are trying to achieve, I believe will help diversify the way we start looking at our students and bringing equality into the classroom. For instance, if I were to come up with a project, let's just say, there is a popular course right now called forensics. And if I were to come up with a project where students were to create their own home forensics or fingerprint testing kit, quite easy to do. You can look it up online, and it's a really neat project. And the students, I can ask my students, I would like you to set up a crime scene, let's just say in my classroom. Could we consider that some of our language learners might also be able to participate in a project like this? Could we consider that we are going to assess differently our students based on what is the outcome that I am looking for them to actually achieve? And I guarantee with some of these projects and experiential learning components, we are now creating some lifelong learners, because they are going to remember, oh wow, I had the opportunity to set up let's just say, a crime scene in my classroom. I had to walk my students through the stages of figuring out who actually committed this crime by showing them how to use a fingerprint testing kit, let's just say. So there's different ways to try to think of creativity and leveraging some of these opportunities for our language learners. And what we're really trying to look at is how can we really speak to the blended learning message today about differentiating time, space, and place for our students. So again, what are some things that we can actually look for with our students that go beyond language? General intellectual ability, perhaps creative thinking. Maybe it's going to be their leadership ability, their visual and performing arts ability, or specific ability for aptitude. There are many ways that we can start thinking, how else can I evaluate a competency to really think holistically for the students. And so it is quite interesting for, let's take our SPED programs, our special education programs that we have within the schools. Quite often when administrators or counselors are making the schedule, we have seen in some of, let's say, I can only speak to my school district at LA Unified where I first started out, is we would want to make sure that we offered as many blended opportunities for our special education programs as possible. And so but one of those opportunities, what seems to always be universal, is let's have the art teacher be able to be the hosting teacher for all of our students that are going through just a lot of different differentiated, that need some differentiated learning opportunities. And whether that was SPED or sometimes our disciplinary problems, sometimes administrators felt like, well, let's put them in the art classroom. But why? Why the art classroom? Is it because they are working on projects for the most part? Are they expected to have some kind of outcome that they can actually show? Is it offering the student different types of experiences in learning? And we start thinking, well, why aren't we all becoming more like the art classroom or the art teacher and providing those different types of experiences for our students? How are we showing their work and letting them display their work? So there are many, many lessons that we can learn on how we, in our early education experiences. So an interesting graphic also from Education Next, and has also been used in Competency Works publications. A study was done for our ELL populations that are out there, and the study shows that, yes, we have a very large Spanish-speaking population that is out in the United States that does represent a majority of our ELL language learner population, but it's changing. We are encountering other states that also have new languages that are being represented. Maine might have been a surprising one for some of us, that that 33% of the ELL population is Somali, 11% Arabic, and then 10% Spanish. So we are seeing some different changes, that it's no longer just a Spanish-English ELL situation, but what many of us are dealing with diversity and language learning in our classroom in different ways. But it is growing, and it is something that we definitely need to be prepared to address. So considering these stages of language acquisition, again, something to ask your school district, your classrooms, your community: how is technology helping our special populations? Does the technology offer self-paced curriculum? What kind of remediation tools does the technology offer? Some of our technology components might include language translation tools now. Some of these tools can combine audio, video, and even text experiences for the students as they are being engaged in these classroom components. The video age is becoming very popular with education today. And we are even seeing it in the colleges. There is a program right now where in order to get, maybe let's just say, industry certified for insurance adjusting, there are programs in order to get the CPCU license within the insurance adjusting, which is basically somewhat like a master's degree for insurance adjusters. And there's actual DVDs that are still mailed out, or of just videos explaining and showing these lessons. Or for medical students, there's videos now of surgeries as part of the educational experience, rather than just being tied to reading the book. So we are seeing many different ways that even colleges are adapting to using technology to help with the student populations. Again, I bring up the point of Capella University because they have really, as a career-focused and competency-focused program, they have really taken many strides and steps to look at the student holistically. Going on their university website would definitely be worthwhile, in my opinion, to see exactly what it is that they what they're doing in their schools. So a recent article shows advocates of competency-based learning argue that the practice is a more equitable approach to public education, since it holds all students to the same high standards regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic status, or whether they attend schools in poor or affluent communities. Uneven standards being applied to minority and non-minority students, or the uneven quality of teaching and facilities from school to school are believed to be major contributing causes of issues such as achievement gaps. Very interesting study. So again, equality. This is going to be another driving force of our ESSA standards as they continue to grow and be implemented into our schools. So again, in closing this achievement gap, we have to think beyond the diversity that is out there and start thinking about equality and start thinking about how is it that I am going to engage all of my students with these high standards. So again, implementing competency-based education requires learning vocabulary in context. We have to communicate more. We have to communicate to the teacher. We have to start showing these outcomes. Demonstration and performance-based mastery may not always require sequential mastery of basic skills, which I find very interesting that some of our courses definitely can be set up in ways where students are either choosing the pathway to a competency, and we'll discuss that a little bit later with what's called a learning menu, or even if it's teacher assigned, does it have to always be sequential? Well, sometimes in math it does, let's just say, and other courses, but now with competency-based education and thinking about grouping the standards, let's think about it in a different way and truly think about how necessary is it for the students to be given a pathway, or can they choose their own? These DOK4 projects can still be accomplished successfully. Take, for example, the forensics example that I just gave. Students, do they have to be proficient in English, let's just say, in order to complete that project and show mastery? Another example, I think, used by one of the Competency Works journals that was published by Chris Sturgis and Susan Patrick, they refer to the driver's license as a process, as an example of one of the most awesome 16-year-old accomplishments that anybody could do. It's a competency because not only do they have to learn how to drive a car, they have to show mastery both in written form and also by driving the vehicle. And if you notice, if you remember our experiences, because I remember how tense it was, I think I failed actually my first two driving tests because my outcomes were not to satisfaction. I'll leave that to Los Angeles driving experiences. We also are being exposed, or had been exposed to, well, could I do a 3-point turn? Could I make a U-turn? There are different ways that within this outcome-based performance task that was given to me, there were probably about 15 competencies that I had to meet. And so the teacher could, or the driver, instructor, could evaluate me on those concepts while performing that task. So again, let's develop the common language. We want our courseware and designing our lessons to be self-paced. And let's have our curriculum to include these project-based assessments. Let's make sure our curriculum is rigorous with clearly stated objectives for mastery. So in designing this, we have to consider how are we going to approach designing our competency-based programs. An example has been provided to us by the Learning Accelerator, and the TLA educator learning model provides some guidance. There are other models out there as well that have been promoted on Competency Works, and I definitely encourage you to research what's out there. Next Gen Learning also has some great resources on implementing competency-based education within your schools and the steps to do so. But what I liked is the discussion of creating the baseline method of instruction on a unified front with the teachers, the administrators, the school district, and all stakeholders. What is the baseline requirements that first need to be determined? And then again, how are we using technology to easily obtain data for groups of students? So if we develop a baseline, how are we going to, again, use technology to make sure that we get feedback on that baseline? There's a lot of different instructional delivery tools that's out there. Are we utilizing our tablets? Are we utilizing the smart boards? Many of us are getting closer and closer to one-on-one implementations. We still have our traditional textbooks. It's funny talking about textbooks as traditional, as almost as if they were antiquated. So please believe me that the textbooks integrated with desktop components and laptops is just as equally as important. But let's not forget the value of the books that we have on there, regardless of the drive of technology today within the classrooms. And then lecture components, that's going to also be an instructional delivery tool, and one-to-one. There's all different kinds of modalities, and we have to find what is exactly right for our students. What kind of tools are out there to help us actually make sense of these tools? There's programs and companies coming out every day that are providing us with tools for education. One that comes to mind actually is one that I recently learned about with a school district called Blender Learn, where the school district actually has developed their own dashboard for their school community, parents, students, district administrators, through something called Blender Learn, and they could customize their dashboards. And then we have to think about delivery. So are we going to do blended learning, such as our station rotation models or our flex models? What is going to be the best for us? There's no one solid solution, in my opinion, because we have such a diverse base of socio groupings within our schools and backgrounds. And so there's going to be different kinds of challenges and elements, but I guarantee there is a blended learning model, let's just say, that is right for your school. And again, how are we going to manage some of this content? There are new LTI tools that are out there, such as Schoology, Blackboard. It's learning some of the traditional ones and ones that we may not have heard of that are out there to help make sense of some of these components. Many more are definitely up and coming. And planning. Planning is going to be, again, as always, such a crucial component to figuring out to the instructional design and curriculum of how to approach and deliver our standards-based curriculum. So again, we want to look at what tools are out there to help us plan. Is there tools out there that have standard search capabilities, let's just say? And that is going to be a very, very important component for researching content out over there for some of our programs that actually offer content for your classrooms. The standard search is going to be, will make life so much easier in trying to help develop and create curriculum, let's just say, for your classrooms. Doing some of those standard searches can be tied into those I can statements. I can quote from a text explicitly and draw inferences. So is your technology tools able to actually complete some of these tasks? When looking for content out there as well, quality has also been something that has been discussed highly, as far as, is this really, let's just say, aligned, and there's just going to be a lot more quality programs out there checking to see, such as Quality Matters, checking it to provide input and feedback for our buyers out there, and for districts that are out there who are wanting to know, is this something that has definitely gone through a quality assurance program. And again, the development, independent learning and reflection. How are we using technology to aid students to receive and interact with information? In our reflection discussion, how are teachers using this data to aid their own instructional practice? SS Standards is not only focusing on equity, but continuous improvement. This is going to be so huge, and also, to me, somewhat refreshing, that we are given now this pathway and this doorway to say, it's okay to try something new. It's okay if we need to improve, and let's just continuously reflect and work on this. So in implementing it for our programs, make sure that the curriculum that you're choosing for your classroom, for, let's just say, that incorporates technology, includes groupings of projects. As creative as all of us teachers are, we definitely need help in developing projects that work. And so programs, let's just say, such as the Odysseyware program, definitely contain some of these projects that are able to be utilized as a standalone or incorporated as part of a course. Make sure the objectives, again, are clearly defined, and what is the outcome that you have in mind for the students. Making sure that the technology is really capable to aid us with the student's ability to choose their learning environments in his or her time, place, or space. If you are looking for some examples and a discussion piece for your own professional development, let's just say in your school districts. I know some school districts really encourage, let's just say, Socratic seminars where teachers are bringing in articles. I recommend one from Education Week, where a great story about a teacher implementing a competency model in a middle school classroom and utilizing something called a learning menu. Learning menus very much have an opportunity to access different aspects of the DOKs. What I really, really like about the learning menu is that you can start designing lessons based on, let's just say, the levels of the DOKs, and start letting students choose which of the lessons that they would like to proceed with. And I'll show an example. So of course we have our level 1 DOK as recall and reproduction. And some of us are familiar with these DOKs already. The level 2, skills and concepts, where we're describing and explaining examples. So it's a little bit more complex. And now we've added the complexity. Level 3, strategic thinking, where we use concepts to solve non-routine problems. There might be more than one possible answer, which for someone like me kills me because I want the one right answer. And so the DOKs is pushing us as teachers not only to having to evaluate differently, but to actually rethink what kind of questions are we asking our students as well. And finally, level 4, the part where I really think that this is the project-based component, conducting the investigation from specifying a problem to designing and carrying out an experiment. So this is an opportunity really for the student to show their outcomes. How many projects should we have in a semester? Well, that's going to be totally dependent upon your teaching style, on the course matter itself. Some schools might implement with the idea that we would like just one project for the semester. Let's just say a culminating project. Others might do it per unit level, so they might have 4 or 5 per semester of outcomes that are needed. That is something for you to decide. But those components where the student is actually doing and showing the outcome is this level 4 component that is definitely the goal that we want to look at our students and complete that evaluation. So these learning menus, they can be designed around learning objectives or project-based learning opportunities. Offer opportunities for student-led opportunities to show how they will show mastery, allow for more flexibility in student pacing, and promote student portfolios. So when thinking about creating this learning menu, take your standards. Again, maybe make them into those I can statements, such as in the standards-based report card. And then taking those I can statements, we can actually document them. This is the top of a page of a learning menu where a teacher can work with a student in, let's just say, let's think of the end first. And what driving question would I want to answer? So let's just say in Unit 1 of a history course, or even language course, language arts course, we have something called Intersection in a New World. So many of us in our American literature courses started off with, let's just say, at the same time as the U.S. history course, where the first Americans had, or first European settlers had come to the United States, or it might have been with the Native American population who were definitely completely fluent with their literature and their form of communication. And now we have two cultures combining. What happens next? So this might be a driving question for some of our students. Provide the I can statements for them already, because this is what you as a teacher will have already grouped together. So maybe they can write narratives to explain real or imagined scenarios, or produce writing that is clear and coherent, and so on and so forth. And then when you actually design the lessons, let's think about the first component of the DOK. Let's just say the recall. So you might have some differentiated lessons to where they read passages. It might be a passage, let's just say, from Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and Native American poems that's included in a packet per se, whether photocopied, whether in digital format, whether from a textbook. It can be, again, you will decide what delivery tools that you will use. And if you have programs and digital content such as Odysseyware, that might be another pathway that a student could use. And so let the student decide. Why not? Because they're both achieving the same type of outcome for that first DOK level. And then another menu item may not be as flexible on the teacher's end, and they will want all their students to actually complete a lesson on comma usage, let's just say. That's okay. But then we might provide them some other opportunities, let's just say, and moving on to DOK level 3, where they're designing lessons where they have to think strategically, but have different ways in showing that they can perform strategic thinking. Let the students decide. And then finally, what is the outcome? It might be an assessment at the very end, but before that assessment, it might be an actual demonstration, recording themselves, maybe doing a news event as if they were a newscaster, and citing what is the difference between accounts of stories to historical accounts, let's just say to opinionated accounts. So take these standards and start creating and grouping them in, again, to these I can statements. The I can statements, I think, are going to be very powerful in your classrooms. And what we're really trying to do is, again, move away from that one teacher who would always tell me, you know, you're also incompetent, you're also incompetent. And we're trying to tell them, yes, you can, so that they can start saying, I can, and get the culture in your classroom talking more about if they didn't succeed, well, you can do it, you just may need to do it again. That's okay in this competency-based approach. So how are we using technology, making sure that we are applying this with technology into a blended setting? It works great. And again, there's more and more colleges that are coming out with addressing competency-based education. These career colleges, they've been doing it all along. Well, I think the high schools are starting to as well, but it's going to take some time. So again, technology, it's going to be one of your best friends in moving forward with competency-based education. Think of those students who that need that immediate feedback, and technology can provide that for us. Look for programs that are customizable, programs that can embed your own content, and actually where you can insert your own lessons or create your own tests, create your own projects that are able to be used in your classroom environments. So finding these right tools to diversify instruction, again, is going to be so key. So find these tools, make it fun, and make it meaningful in your competency-based program. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Now we'll be going to your questions for a brief Q&A session. If you'd like to ask a question, please enter your questions in the Q&A or chat box in the GoToWebinar screen. Let's see here. We do have a couple. Okay, Joel, someone would like to know what is the #1 most important piece of technology that can help foster the transition to competency-based learning?
I would say one of the #1 piece for competency-based learning is going to be the data feedback that you get that is immediate for teachers. Now, I know some programs are making it available for students as well, and that to me is going to be a key feature, is the data feedback for students. Again, these programs are evolving, and we're seeing multiple levels of district level data and for teachers, but I am really looking at what can students see immediately upon completion of an assessment.
Sure, immediate feedback, right?
Correct.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. Another person asks, what role do PLC's, professional learning communities, play in a successful competency-based learning implementation?
So the PLCs, definitely, if I'm understanding correctly, with the PLCs, and offer many different types of opportunities for students who really are approaching and engaging learning in a new way. I personally think that this is the root, the grounding of how to actually implement in a district. And now all of a sudden the PLCs, to me, where they might have been seen as the alternative approach, now is going to be the exemplary approach. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be so important to start getting your data, speak with your consultants, speak with your administrators. I very much advise that an opportunity to implement competency-based is going to be almost like a marketing opportunity for the PLC to implement district-wide. And I would find that the role model opportunities within the PLC is going to be greater than any other traditional setting. And so will be very, very crucial. Again, speak with consultants about designing what kind of outcomes are we expecting at the end of the year, and how are we progressing towards those outcomes so that you are ready to publish your findings at the end of the year.
Great, thank you. Again, it's all about the data and what it tells you. Nice, thank you. Another asks, let's see, do you have any tips on engaging parents and the community on CBL, especially for parent communications?
So that's a great question. I think the parent component is probably one of the most overlooked in developing out your communication plan. So I worked with one school where their lesson learned in changing up a new program within their middle school environment was that they did not host enough parent meetings. I would say about 60 to 90 days earlier, and even at the end of the year prior that they had actually planned to implement their new model and approach. So the earlier that you can start promoting to the parents, the better it's going to be, because and that can be done in series of, let's just say, an end of year meeting. What's new for the fall? So we might want to do a meeting, let's just say in the May timeframe, just to get the word out. And then again in the summer, what's new for the fall? What kind of programs will your students be entering in? And let's just say you are using a technology-based program. What the school started doing is they actually had the parents take a half-hour online digital course alongside with their students, and they were able to create a mini environment and almost a role model for a 30-minute session within this parent conference time that was set up and organized by teachers to actually show them this is exactly how we are going to approach this new semester. So for the second year, when they actually had done that, taken that approach and really involved the parents, their parent phone calls reduced drastically, because in the first year, the principal basically had to set up every Tuesday and organize parents just to come in, because there were so many questions coming in. What my students are learning differently, or they're on the computer too much, or I don't understand what it is that they're doing. So the principal actually had to set up every Tuesday open house per se, and actually tour parents to walk through the classrooms and see exactly what teachers were doing and discuss what it was traditionally that they were doing and what is new now. And so it was definitely a year-round marketing event. So the earlier that you can reach the parents, the better. Walk them through a role model opportunity in the middle of the year, and I would definitely recommend probably 2 follow-ups at least throughout this regular school year.
Great, thank you. That sounds like a good plan. All right, so I do want to mention once again, we'll be sending out a follow-up email shortly, and in that follow-up email, you'll have access to the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides that were shared today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. So thank you again, Joel, for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you, Odysseyware, for sponsoring this webinar. Please do visit Odysseyware's website for more information, how they can help you and your students succeed academically. Now, on behalf of Joel Ramirez and Odysseyware, we would like to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.